The Matrix trilogy is one of our favorite cinematic accomplishments. We've already made a couple videos about it, and they're some of the most popular videos on our channel. So if you want to learn more about the production and the philosophy behind the first movie, or if you want an explanation on why the trilogy is best looked at as a 6-hour-long anime, pause this video and go check those out. There's links to both in the description. Needless to say, we, along with millions of other people, were very excited about the prospect of another movie set in that world. Especially since the Wachowskis were coming back. One of them, at least. For years, Warner Brothers had asked the siblings to make another movie, and the siblings had always turned them down. After the Matrix Revolutions, the Wachowskis said their story was concluded and they weren't interested in making any future installments.
We kept some kids entertained.
And as recently as 2015, they held the same conviction. In an interview while promoting their film Jupiter Ascending, Lily Wachowski called the idea of revisiting the Matrix movies particularly repelling, and compared the idea of reboots to fast food where people know exactly what they're going to get when they sit down. Her sentiment seemed to be that rebooting old franchises for a guaranteed box office return is a symptom of the film industry's illness that's eating away at it from the inside. Lana reiterated this statement and said they hadn't heard any talk about any more Matrix movies, but believed Warner Brothers was in the process of replacing the sisters and moving forward.
Warner Brothers has decided to make a sequel to the trilogy. They informed me they're going to do it with or without us.
Warner Brothers probably couldn't have gotten away with it though, because Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Hugo Weaving, and Lawrence Fishburne all said they would only come back to the series if the Wachowskis wrote and directed. So 16 years go by, and most Matrix fans had lost hope and eventually interest in another Matrix movie, but in early 2019, tragedy struck the Wachowskis and work on the fourth movie began. Within a few months of each other, their mom and dad both died, along with one of Lana's closest friends, and as a way to cope, she started writing about Neo and Trinity again. She said, "I couldn't have my mom and dad, but it was immediately comforting to have Neo and Trinity alive again."
Nothing comforts anxiety like little nostalgia.
With that in mind, it's easy to imagine Lana writing a sort of journal entry about the fictitious future lives of some of the friends she used to have, like a form of therapy, except because she's Lana Wachowski and because her old friends happen to be characters from The Matrix, her private little half-baked idea got turned into a $190 million movie. The Wachowski penned script finished, Warner Bros. Finally had what they needed to greenlight a sequel and make millions of dollars. Fans rejoiced at getting something we didn't even know we wanted, and announcements about the cast started rolling out. There were a lot of newcomers involved, like Yahya Abdul-Mateen II and Jessica Henwick, which was great, and Neil Patrick Harris was out of left field, but he's a good actor and he always looks great in a suit, so that was promising.
Nothing suits me like a suit!
Surprisingly, Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves were among the first announced to be returning to the franchise. That was weird, not only because at least one of them is definitely dead at the end of the last movie, but also Keanu just doesn't really look like Neo anymore. You know?
I was kind of worried at first because he's so much older. The beard, the hair.
We had our doubts, but there was a Wachowski behind the driver's seat, someone who truly understood what it was about the trilogy that made those movies so great. We all know the first Matrix is a perfect movie, and despite maybe a few issues with pacing or a lack of character development in some places, Reloaded and Revolutions offer an awesome and satisfying conclusion to the story that the 1999 original started. So we pushed our doubts aside and we settled into our chairs at our local theater, ready to be dazzled once again by the brilliance of a world that meant so much to us.
I mean, OMG.
What if the movie sucks?
The movie opens with a brilliant Matrix theme originally written by Don Davis. Seriously, it's brilliantly written. Check out the video about the trilogy soundtrack by Sideways to get an idea of how insanely complex and impressive that score is. Another link in the description for you. The second you hear it, you're immediately transported back to how it felt watching the first 3 movies in theaters. The hype couldn't have been higher. We jump right into something familiar, yet different. It's Trinity getting attacked by agents, only Agent Smith looks kinda like Morpheus and Trinity is played by the wrong person, and who are these people watching them from what looks like a different plane of reality? The scene is intriguing and fast-paced, and it's enough to get you excited about what the hell is going on. Bugs mentions that there's something weird going on in this modal, and unless you're a web developer, you probably never heard that word before. A modal is a window that pops up inside another window, like when a web page has a little pop-up that asks you to accept cookies or disable your ad blocker. So Bugs is telling us that she's currently inside a simulation looking into another simulation running in parallel space. This is a really cool idea that never comes up again. Then we get our first fight scene. It's quick, but right away it's apparent that the legendary fight choreographer behind the first 3 movies, as well as Kill Bill, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Iron Monkey, Drunken Master, and dozens of others, was absent for this installment. The fight choreography Yuen Wu-Ping brought to the original trilogy is part of what makes this movie so iconic. This time the fights are choreographed by Joshua Groth, who Lana had worked with on her Netflix show, Sense8. Resurrections is his 3rd credit as a fight choreographer, and his lack of experience is painfully apparent. Jumping forward a bit, you can compare some of the other fight scenes that are more or less tributes to ones we first saw in the trilogy. This fight in the warehouse is reminiscent of the Chateau fight from Reloaded, where the Merovingian is ordering his exiles to attack Neo.
Kill him.
But the camera is just jumping around everywhere, and you can't even make out a single beat of the fight between any of the 6 or so characters on the screen. Or this fight between Neo and Smith, that's trying to remind us of the iconic subway fight at the end of the first movie. But this scene is just about 5 minutes of tight, rapid shots of forgettable fighting, punctuated by this big old Jedi force push that becomes a staple of this movie. Anyway, back to the beginning. Bugs gets discovered by the agents, which should be terrifying.
Every single man or woman who has stood their ground, everyone who has fought an agent has died.
You see an agent, you do what we do. Run.
But Bugs takes the time to make a few little jokes before she runs.
You'll carry on. I'm just scared. Scare myself out.
I get that she's cracking jokes because she's nervous, but this reaction feels more like what you'd see in an awkward social situation than when you're getting stared down by 3 immortal executioners. Undercutting the moment with humor robs the scene of any tension, and it completely undermines the agents. It's like Lana's telling us the agents are nothing to be afraid of in this movie. A few minutes later, Bugs is having her first conversation with Smithius, and during the short montage of his awakening, we see him step out of the shower and go to the gym, and suddenly I have no idea what it means to be an agent anymore. In the trilogy, it seemed like agents were supposed to show up, serve their purpose, and leave. They're like Mr. Meeseeks.
Once Zion is destroyed, there is no need for me to be here. Do you understand?
It's getting weird.
But for some reason, this agent is taking showers and going to the gym. Why does he even need to work out?
I don't go to the gym, I'm just naturally like this.
But Bugs discovers that this agent calls himself Morpheus and believes that his purpose is to find Neo, so she red pills him, which I guess makes you kind of stoned these days.
Agent Smith?
And they escape the pursuing agents together. Later in the movie, she says,
We don't have to run to phone booths anymore either.
and that alone kind of ruins the suspense of the movie. It's established that people can just be unplugged from the Matrix whenever, so scenes like this where Bugs and the Morpheus clone run away from the agents are nonsense. They could just ask to be unplugged. Or maybe Morpheus couldn't, but Bugs could get unplugged and then just leave Morpheus to fend for himself for the few seconds it takes to find his code or whatever's supposed to be happening. Later, Bugs asks to go into the Matrix so she can help Neo and Trinity, and Seek says,
Can get you in? I don't know if I can get you out.
but why does he say that? There's no risk involved in jacking into the Matrix anymore. The whole climactic chase at the end of the movie doesn't need to happen because Seek can just unplug them. One of the main sources of recurring tension throughout the whole franchise gets deleted with this one idea. If something is dangerous in the Matrix, just leave the Matrix. After the opening Morpheus sequence, we get reintroduced to Thomas Anderson, who's now the lead game developer behind a successful trilogy of games called The Matrix. This is where people in the audience's heads start exploding.
Buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye.
For the next hour, this movie can't stop referencing the fact that it's the 4th movie in a franchise.
Which I think are great things to keep in mind as you begin working on Matrix 4.
Lana does a good job of putting us in Thomas's shoes for the first hour. He doesn't know what's happening, and neither do we, in a way that feels very deliberate. It's like a horror film where the protagonist is scared, and so are you. It's just effective storytelling, but shortly after Neo is recovered from the Machine City, we start getting the rest of the plot explained to us, and any emotional connection to the movie washes away, despite Lana's best efforts. 20 plus times we see clips of the original trilogy, sometimes playing over the lines that new characters are saying.
Billions of people just living out their lives.
FBI interrogation. Ones and zeros. Light and dark.
Sequels and reboots recreate scenes from earlier movies all the time, but Lana chose to beat us over the head with it in the most blatant way possible. She's trying to show us glimpses of what Neo is seeing as his reality is coming apart at the seams, but man, I couldn't think of a worse way to do it.
Mr. Anderson!
Never show a good movie in the middle of your crappy movie.
Then we meet Tiffany, who's again living inside the Matrix as a soccer mom. Whenever she thinks she might be destined for more or begins to stray from her path in any way, she's pulled back in line by her husband or by her kids needing her attention. This is kind of weird, but it's another one of the great ideas that hint at the new metaphor Lana was trying to express in this movie. We learn from the analyst that when so many humans were freed by Neo's sacrifice and revolutions, the machines lost too much power. Deus Ex Machina, aka the Machine Baby, agreed to free any humans that wanted to be free, and he's a baby of his word. So the Architect and the Oracle got deleted for their 6 failed attempts to successfully maintain the Matrix, and the analyst was allowed to create a new Matrix when his theory proved to provide enough power to keep the lights on. The analyst observed that humans output way more energy when they're stressed out all the time than they did when they were complacent, like in the Architect's Matrix. So he created a system in which people would constantly be driven to achieve something that would always be just out of reach. He found that as long as they felt like they had a chance at some unobtainable desire, then they wouldn't rebel against the system, even though the analyst's new system would ensure that whatever it is that person wanted would always be out of reach.
If only you could move faster.
Feeling like society is a construct made to control you is just our reality, and whenever Neo gets close to realizing it, he finds himself in his therapist's office, being told he just had a panic attack. Or talking to another one of his handlers, being told that these wild ideas he has about the true nature of things is all in his imagination, that he's confusing reality with a video game.
Where better to bury truth than inside something as ordinary as a video game?
It's the same sort of idea behind the first movie. There's this massive invisible network of control out there designed to keep you in line and blind you to any alternative. Lana found a way to update that idea in this subtle new way that feels both original and true to the concepts of the earlier movies. Except, like so many of the great ideas in Resurrections, it was executed poorly. Trinity doesn't do much in the movie besides order coffee, ride her motorcycle through a bunch of CGI, and deliver forced dialogue about her deepest insecurities to this old man she just met. She doesn't ever really feel like Trinity until the final scene of the movie, and I get that the plot of the movie demands that, but it's like, why are you going to put Luke Skywalker in your movie if he's not going to act like Luke Skywalker? In the same scene, her husband shows up after waiting an irrationally short period of time for her to get her coffee, and there's this cute little casting wink of the audience here. Her husband's name is Chad, and he's played by Chad Stahelski, who was Keanu's stunt double for the first 3 movies. So here in this meta retelling of the story, Neo's replacement is played by Keanu's replacement. It's a simple little thing that you wouldn't notice unless you were really into the first few movies, but I appreciated it. Chad also directed the John Wick movies, which he developed with Keanu because the two of them really wanted to work together again. So Neo goes back to his job working for his money-grubbing studio overlord. It's important to note here that he's going by the name Thomas Anderson again. Something we didn't mention in our video on the first movie is the significance of the name Thomas. The trilogy, much more so than this movie, relied heavily on the use of religious allegory, whether it be big flashy things like Neo's ascension, or subtle things like Smith's license plate, or metatextual things like Neo's pre-enlightened name. In the Bible, there's a character referred to as Doubting Thomas. He doesn't believe in Jesus' resurrection until he personally felt the crucifixion wounds. This mirrors Neo's disbelief that he was the one until he personally experienced his own resurrection. So here we are again, back where it all started.
Back to the Matrix.
Where he no longer believes he's Neo and he's back to being a doubting Tom. This time around he isn't found after relentless decades of searching by one man. The Morpheus program just does a Control-F search to locate Neo's body, while Bugs invites Neo through a portal and into another disappointing action sequence. On paper, this scene is a really cool idea. There are a few awesome fight sequences that take place on a train. Snowpiercer has a few good ones, Train to Busan. But imagine what an incredible close-quarters combat scene between 20 people on a speeding train could look like if there was a decent fight choreographer and a decent cinematographer in charge of it. Instead, it's another poorly executed fight scene where there's so much going on that no one part of it is engaging. Sloppy execution aside, this scene introduces one of the least interesting and most nonsensical elements of the new Matrix: swarm mode. Instead of the agents of the machine being literal agents, unkillable, iconic, superhuman programs designed to maintain order, in Resurrections the agents of the machine are just, like, people. Nameless, boring people. They're not legendary fighters and they don't have a cool presence, they're just people, and they swarm towards our protagonists. When this shows up again in the climax, it feels like we're watching a sequel to World War Z. So this fight scene goes on until Lana gets tired of it, because again, people could just be unplugged at will, and Neo wakes up in his pod, which looks pretty awesome actually. It's cool to see the subtle ways the machines have evolved over time. Even the unfriendly machines seem to have gotten a bit more organic with their design. The friendly robots pluck him directly out of his pod this time, instead of waiting for him to get flushed like he was the first time we saw this happen, and he gets taken to the other Knezer to meet the rest of Bugs' crew. This is a whole crew of people that are personally invested in the belief that Neo can save them. He's either inadvertently the reason they woke up, or he fought the machines with one of their relatives, or they devoted their life to studying him.
Bug is our resident neologist.
And that's all we get to know about these guys. There's already too much going on in this movie to spend any time developing them. Bugs tells Neo that he was rescued by these two machines that are now exiled and they have no way of returning to save Trinity.
Even if it were Trinity and she wanted to be free, we have no idea how to do it.
It's another nonsense line. Neo knows where to find Trinity in the Matrix, and he knows she's unhappy. It wouldn't be much of a stretch to think he could just jack back into the Matrix looking like Keanu Reeves and convince her that she's not crazy. Even at the end of the movie, we see the machines never made an effort to up the security in the Anomalium itself, so really the only thing stopping them from saving her is Lana's desire to add another hour to the runtime. So we quickly move to the remake of this dojo scene from the first movie, except this time it doesn't advance the story in any way. If anything, it's just here to show us that Neo sucks as a fighter now. This isn't a scene that shows us how skilled of a fighter Morpheus is, and it's not here to help explain the lack of limitations inside the Matrix. This dojo scene is just here for another callback to a better movie. There's a contrived excuse that Neo is rejecting the real world because he's addicted to blue pills, so Morpheus' plan here is, I guess, to punch belief into him? It makes me want to leave the theater and go watch They Live instead, which, if you think about it, makes a better sequel to The Matrix than this does.
Like and subscribe.
Once Neo settles in, we visit the new Last Human City and meet Jada Pinkett Smith, giving us the most convincing old lady performance I've seen since high school drama class. She imprisons Neo because she knows he's going to try to save Trinity, and she thinks that'll put the city in jeopardy. He escapes pretty easily, and we jump into the aforementioned warehouse fight with a bunch of exiles that this time around aren't incorporeal ghosts or werewolves or anything else memorable. They're just vaguely Eastern? If you know which folklore creatures these guys are supposed to represent, let us know in the comments. We also get another visit from the Merovingian, who now has a wardrobe exclusively from Mugatu's Derelict collection. He only shows up to rant about the good old days before Facebook and whatever cockme climate-y wiki piss and shit is supposed to be, and then he leaves after telling us he's going to get his own TV spin-off series, and I'm at a loss for words here. Come back to me, Merv. You were one of my favorite characters.
I will remember you.
In the same scene, Smith tells Neo that in order to get his life back, Neo's has to end, but no. Nobody's paying attention to Smith. The analyst isn't keeping tabs on him, and Neo isn't hindering him in any way from, I don't know, whatever it is a program does in his downtime. Going to the gym, I guess. In the first movie, Smith is hunting down Neo because he's designed to eliminate threats to the stability of the Matrix. In the rest of the trilogy, his goal is to completely take over the Matrix, and Neo is the one obstacle in his way. In this movie, there's nothing stopping him from going back to his job as a CEO of a game development company. I don't know why he'd want to, but it seems really important to him to get his old life back. Unless by old life he means his life as an agent, but his sole motivation in the entire trilogy was to not be stuck working as an agent anymore? I don't know, it feels like Lana forgot to give this guy any motivation, and he makes no sense in this movie.
Oh my god.
The analyst gives his expository monologue, and Captain Niobe Sparrow gets mad at everybody for a second time, and the third act kicks off with the return of Sati. Remember her? The little girl from the train station? Lana does. She tells us that her dad secretly gave her the plans to the Death Star because he knew one day she would return with the team and defeat the Empire. The timeline gets really fuzzy here. She says he told her about the Anomalium, but he couldn't have told her that back when she was 8 years old because the Anomalium didn't exist yet. And he couldn't have told her that recently because his speech in Revolutions, the one that summarizes the heart of the entire trilogy, is about loving his daughter so much that he'll choose to never see her again if it means she won't be deleted. If they somehow stay in touch after this, even in a new Matrix that's even more oppressive, then their relationship undermines the whole message of the trilogy. Neo's deal with Deus Ex Machina was to allow the people that wanted to be free, but he said nothing about getting rid of the agents, so surely they'd still be out there trying to stop people from collaborating with exiles.
Then you're meant for one more thing. Deletion.
However it happens, Sati launches into explaining the intricate details of the heist while the movie intercuts between her explanation and the heist taking place. It's very reminiscent of the same scene in Reloaded where the Keymaker explains the intricate details of a heist that results in Neo saving Trinity. Maybe it's the decision to set this scene in the forest, or maybe it's the cutaway to Niobe asking for volunteers.
You son of a bitch! I'm in!
But this recreation of that sequence is nowhere near as engaging, and a lot of bad ideas clash into each other for the rest of the movie. The analyst says he'll restore the Matrix to the previous version if Neo doesn't comply, and we know that whenever this happens, everyone plugged into the Matrix dies.
It was a disaster. No one would accept the program. Entire crops were lost.
And that'd be a bummer, but the whole reason the analyst is in power is because he developed a new version of the Matrix that puts out enough power to be sustainable. So he can't revert the Matrix to a previous version without undoing the one thing the machines keep him around for. Meaning this threat doesn't amount to much more than the survival of humanity, and that's not so bad. Besides, wasn't the previous version of the Matrix generally better for humanity? After this little back and forth with Neo, Trinity shows up and decides not to believe Neo.
It's too late.
I understand.
Well, I don't. The whole decision to make Trinity choose whether or not she wants to stay in the Matrix is such a weird plot point. From the coffee shop conversations with Trinity, we learn that the Matrix games feel like memories to her, and she's not sure what's real anymore. She practically begs Neo for an explanation during this conversation where the future of the human race depends on Trinity remembering what the Matrix is. But he just says he doesn't have an easy answer and watches her go instead of trying to help her understand anything that's going on. In the first movie, Neo had a few weird experiences that he thought were just dreams, and he had a vague idea of something called the Matrix and a hacker named Morpheus. Once they found his body, Morpheus's crew had no problem yanking him out of there. So the idea that Trinity needs to fully accept that her reality is false and turn into the same sort of all-powerful god that Neo was before she can be freed isn't consistent with anything else in the trilogy, and there's nothing in this movie to help make any sense of it. The other issue here is that Bugs' crew doesn't think they'll be able to recover Trinity's body.
Even if it were Trinity and she wanted to be free, we have no idea how to do it.
But when it comes time to save her, they just fly right in and start this convoluted extraction sequence that I still don't fully understand. It's just 15 seconds of screaming. Sati says something about using Bugs as a proxy for Trinity because they have matching brainwaves, but why they felt like they needed to do this instead of waiting the 2 minutes for Trinity to swallow a pill and wake up on her own is a mystery. Before they save her, Smith appears and shoots the analyst out of the scene.
You know the difference between us, Tom? Anyone could have been you.
The analyst shows up again in the last scene, totally unharmed, so I don't know what Smith thinks he's accomplishing here, but he's pretty proud of himself.
Whereas I've always been anyone.
And then he just walks out of the movie. Neo and Trinity could just get unplugged at this point.
Nodal fibrillation is critical. She'll die if we don't extract.
But they decide to race through the city for a while and blow up some helicopters before they do.
Bye.
I guess Trinity is a literal god now, way more powerful than Neo ever was, because after this she blows a hole in the analyst's wall and puts his face back together a few times with a snap of her fingers. The movie ends with the heroes flying into the camera, a clear tribute to the first movie, except this time around we've already seen Neo and Trinity fly, so there's nothing surprising here, and we've got no idea what she means when she says she'll remake the Matrix.
We were on our way to remake your world.
Change a few things.
This line is supposed to feel like a mic drop, but I'm honestly just confused. Is she gonna go from person to person and try to convince them to wake up? Is she gonna go on a crusade to hunt down and kill all the bots? Because that'd be kinda terrifying for the people who befriended those bots unknowingly. Also, isn't the whole goal of these movies to destroy the Matrix? Is her plan really just to make sure humanity stays happily sedated in their pods? This ending wants us to feel satisfied, but it does nothing to deserve it.
Bye.
The Rage Against the Machine cover that plays at the beginning of the credits symbolically represents the problem with the entire movie. It's changing something we recognize into a commercial imitation with the hope that we'll love it as much as the original. It's a cherry on top of this perfect shit sundae. You just don't cover bands like Rage Against the Machine. I can't help but feel like we're being subjected to Lana's trauma, and while the script might have been really helpful for her personally, this movie is a real disservice to the fans. It's clear that this movie wasn't made because the creative force behind it had revolutionary ideas that needed to be told on screen. The people that worked on this one refer to her as some sort of creative genius, but it's pretty easy to infer that she was just kind of winging it when it came to this movie. In an interview with producer James McTeague, a producer on all 4 movies, he said Lana came up with the entire idea in a dream one night and called him the next day to talk about it. He went on to say that for the first few movies, they storyboarded everything and stuck to their carefully planned idea, but in the 20 years since then, their filmmaking style has gotten a lot more improvisational. Jessica Henwick, who plays Bugs, said Lana would often let a take run for 20 minutes and move the camera suddenly from character to character, so you'd always have to be ready in case the camera moved over to you. She said it was fascinating to watch a director operate based so much on gut feeling, but it's clear from the finished product that whatever idea Lana had in her head would have benefited from some planning. According to Jessica, when production got shut down for 3 months due to COVID, Lana considered just letting it go and not coming back to finish the movie. So the writer and director of the movie, the person who should care the most, decided maybe it'd be best to let this one go. There's so much potential in this story that taking a break for a while to draw up a storyboard, hire an experienced fight choreographer, wait for certain actors to be available, and flesh out the message she was trying to go for probably would have been the right call to make. The message at the heart of the whole Matrix franchise has been about how love can conquer all obstacles. If you missed that, then check out our video on the trilogy. And for this 4th movie, I get the impression that Lana's upset that the larger portion of the audience missed the message. That Neo is the chosen one and is destined to save humanity all by himself is a shallow and erroneous interpretation of the trilogy. Neo was destined to be the one, but the reason he doesn't just immediately fold to the ultimatum the architect gives him is because of his love for Trinity. Neo doesn't die here because Trinity loves him, and Trinity doesn't die here because Neo loves her. Her love gives him strength, and without it, all of his abilities and his destiny for greatness don't amount to anything more than the pre-scripted loop the architect created for him. It seems like because all the flashy effects were the main takeaway most people got from the trilogy, Lana systematically ripped out everything the fans loved about them and rewrote the emphasis around Neo needing Trinity's love and vice versa to save humanity. What remains is a movie completely devoid of any new ideas, with all memorable elements stripped out and a message transcribed as literal plot, so you can't miss it. The bots in the movie, while weird on the surface, take on new meaning through what they apparently represent. They're basically puppets of the handlers that guide Thomas and Tiffany into repetitive stagnation. So when Neo and Trinity are speeding through the city, dodging bots who are literally hurling their bodies at them, Lana's telling us, I know you want a big climactic fight scene here, but Neo and Trinity's love is what you should be paying attention to, so they're gonna dodge all of you mindless fans acting like extensions of Warner Brothers telling me what this movie needs to be. And hey, good for you, Lana. You sure showed us. We don't like this movie at all.